Few developers can come out of the gate swinging with a fantastic first game, no matter how large their team size or budget. They are often lucky to release an okay game, let alone a great one, on their first try. Some things just have to be earned through patience, practice, and good old trial and error, with each game building on the strengths of the last until finally a moment of clarity is reached. And that moment has finally arrived for logic artists. After a decade of releasing 2 other decent turn-based tactics games, and a stealth game I really need to get around to playing, they have finally arrived at their moment of clarity. One where the tactical gameplay and role-playing mechanics they started playing with in Expeditions Conquistador, further refined in Expeditions Viking, have finally come together into a cohesive whole. And that whole is called Expeditions Rome. The premise? Simple. Julius Caesar gets killed about 30 years early and never amasses the personal power he needs to seize control of Rome. The reins of the historical fiction that follows instead falls to your very own custom-made player character, should they be a man or a woman. With Expeditions Rome going out of its way to throw several creative roadblocks and insults your way, should you choose to play as a member of the fairer sex.
A woman led the legion. This young girl in her pretty dress.
Rather than just treating her as a man with tits or never bringing it up at all. Gameplay is a mix of grand strategy, tactical wargame with a side of CRPG, and all of it just works. It is up to you to deftly juggle your legion's supplies, conquer territory, and outmaneuver or parlay with enemy armies. Directly lead your troops into challenging skirmishes, where the objective isn't always to just kill enough of the opposing side, but instead to weather the hail of arrows and Greek fire until the enemies break or your true objective is achieved. All while navigating the perils of the late Roman Republic political system and your interpersonal relationships with your party members and other important NPCs that spans decades.
Did you notice how eager he was about Khalida's plan that involves putting ourselves in as much danger as possible?
All of this culminates into the game's stellar siege battles that act not only as high story points with ever-increasing narrative stakes, but also as gameplay ones, with the game asking you to split your party up into several squads in order to conduct several high-risk missions simultaneously, with the outcome of one having direct and possibly dire consequences for the others.
Well, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions, what's up?
Few battles in Expeditions Rome feel like a give-me. Even the most average of random encounters can prove lethal should you drop your guard, especially on the higher difficulties. Every class not only has its own combat niche, but also 3 separate skill trees they can build into freely, with their gear and weapons determining not only their damage and defense stats, but also the actual abilities each unit can or cannot use in battle. Factor in the game-changing but incredibly limited consumables that every unit can hold 2 of, and the combat goes from superb to outright orgasmic. Opportunity attacks, line of sight, flanking, buffs, debuffs, forced movement, knockdowns, status effects, terrain hazards, and morale. Expeditions Rome has it all. And all of it is held up by a deep and satisfying rule set that almost feels like the video game conversion of 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons we deserved, but sadly, never got. But what left my immaculately chiseled jaw agape was the incredible amount in both mission and objective types they managed to cram into this behemoth. Every time I thought I'd seen it all, the crazed Danes over at Logic Artists go and drop several new, and sometimes outright unique mission scenarios right at my feet. Topping off this digital wargame delight is a healthy heaping of honest-to-goodness role-playing, where the choices made in the game's first several hours will come back to either haunt you or save you in its 60th.
Perhaps you're right.
It is awe-inspiring how a middle-market tactics wargame turned out to be a better and deeper role-playing game with a full cast of lovable party members, dastardly villains, and an engaging plot with an impressive amount of reactivity to the player's decisions, while most of the major AAA RPG studios can't even figure out what stats are. It is almost poetic that just as logic artists found their stride with Expeditions Rome, that the cruel winds of fate would force shut the studio's doors. For almost as soon as Expeditions Rome hit the market, the news broke that the heads of logic artists will be putting the studio into hibernation, while they instead focus on a new company named Dynasty that will reportedly make a NFT multiplayer game. That's a fucking stupid decision. The rights to the Expeditions franchise will stay with its current publisher, THQ Nordic. So hopefully at the very least, former members of the Logic Artists team will be hired on by THQ to make future entries. If, after everything I've shown you about Expeditions Rome, you still think the game looks dull and boring, then bye bitch, don't let the door hit you on your plebeian ass on the way out. Have fun playing God of Boar with the rest of the midwits over on Twitter. But if you look at Expeditions Rome and say, I too want to save the Republic, and maybe bang Cleopatra, then Roma Invictus, my fellow patrician brother. For those who are more gray matter challenged and have not yet been turned off by my use of big words and the lack of anime girls, let me simplify. Expeditions Rome is like Fire Emblem. If the gameplay ever evolved past a 5th grade level, and if Intelligent Systems didn't oversimplify its already bare-bones tactical gameplay in order to court a casual audience of incels and coomers by turning the franchise into a half-assed family-friendly dating simulator. I have officially sworn off buying new Fire Emblem games after playing the concentrated boredom that was 3 Houses. Not until they get their shit together and start making good tactics games again will Intelligent Systems be parting me from my hard-earned money. Fire Emblem Engage, from what I hear, might have filed down more than a few of the series' rough edges that should have been fixed 15 years ago, but I would not know because I refuse to buy the game at full price. Not after the franchise's decade-long decline into slowly becoming a worse version of Persona, and certainly not with that art style. Jesus! But I will buy a copy of whatever game, whatever incarnation of Logic Artists makes next on launch day, because the team at Logic Artists are officially on my shortlist of developers who have earned my trust, and I will buy and play whatever they make next, no questions asked. I hope the studio heads and their crackpot NFT idea crashes and burns, so I can get the next Expeditions game sooner rather than later. Logic Artists, set the next game in the Bronze Age, and I will offer up my firstborn son as tribute. If you even think you will like Expeditions Rome, then I implore you, I urge you to go buy it. I bought the game on sale, and honestly, I feel kind of guilty about that. I would have gladly paid the full asking price of $45 for it. Hell, I would have paid $70 for it. Because it's that good. Expeditions Rome puts most AAA RPGs to shame, and as a tactics game, it completely destroys Fire Emblem. I cannot recommend the game highly enough. You had a good run, Gladius, as the best Roman tactics game of all time. The old king is dead. Long live the new king.